Okay, welcome. I think this is your first day of English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, cool. Well, I'm new. I'm Rakav. I'm from Sioux Falls, not far from here. I attend Lincoln High School, and I scored a perfect 36 on the ACT. So, and he assigned me to talk about English. So, I'll be here a couple of times. I think a total of 5 or 6 times throughout this course, and we're going to talk about English. And I want to start with just some. You don't have to write this down. This is just some common stuff about the ACT English test. The test consists of 75 questions, and you're going to have 45 minutes to do them. So that means, well, whatever it means for math. It's not super fast. Normally, this isn't one that people struggle for on time. It's divided into 5 different passages. So you're going to have 75 minutes, or, oh my goodness, 45 minutes and 5 passages. So about 9 minutes per passage is the pace we're going for. And mainly you're going to get tested on 2 different skills. And those 2 skills are, first of all, usage and mechanics, which is what we're going to talk about today. That makes up for about 40 of the 75 questions. And usage and mechanics is mostly like punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, those kind of things. So that's one of those things is what we're going to talk about today. And the other half of the test, about 35 questions, is rhetorical skills. So that would be more writing strategy or tone or organization, author style. So those ones tend to be harder, and we will get to those and how we can, attack those questions as well. But today I want to start with something specific with your usage and mechanics scores, and that would be punctuation. So today we're just going to talk about pretty much all the punctuation you could possibly see on the ACT English section. And we're going to make kind of like a cheat sheet. So it's going to be like a piece of notebook paper filled with a bunch of different punctuation rules. And this was something I did when I took the ACT as well, where I just made a sheet of all the rules that I could possibly see and studied them maybe for a couple weeks. Just like looked over every night before I went to bed. And after that, I really never forgot them. And I still kind of have them with me now. I can use them all the time. So, yeah, and the big thing and why these are really important is that your usage and mechanics are more so-called easy points, where how you score well in the ACT is, first of all, not minimize mistakes on easy stuff, and then be able to get stuff right when the questions are hard. So this is one of those things that you're trying to minimize mistakes on kind of easier questions. And it might not all be easy, but the ACT considers punctuation kind of gimme points. So right now we're working on how can we not get easy things wrong, or get the gimme points first, so not make mistakes there. So it's really important that we study these and that we know them well, because these are supposed to be time savers almost. You should be able to look at these questions and get them done in like 3 to 4 seconds and be done with these fast. So yeah, we're going to go through all of the different punctuation rules, and we'll do them all together. We'll talk about some different stuff. And I'll start with the most common one that everyone knows, everyone talks about all the time, is that's commas. So there is, how many rules we got here? Ooh. 8 different comma rules. And a couple of them, get this person in here. A couple of them you already know really well because you all speak English. So a lot of these rules you do maybe without even knowing it. You probably do it when you're speaking, you probably do it when you're writing. A lot of them are going to be really easy and quick to learn. So the first, let's start with the easy one. This one you guys, I'm pretty sure learned in like 1st grade. And that is that commas set off items in a list. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'm pretty sure we know this one, but in case anyone doesn't. And an example, like let's say you have to buy some stuff from the store and you need to buy, I don't know. You have to buy those 3 things. You're just going to place commas here and here. Now, technically, this one isn't required. Can anyone that is not sitting in the back right corner of the class tell me what that comma is called? Does anyone know?
Oxford.
Say it again.
Oxford's comma.
Oxford comma, good, yes. And so technically, you don't have to put that there. Some people not in the United States do that, and this is also grammatically acceptable. And they're not going to test you on that on the ACT because there's still a debate on which one is really right. But for the sake of the test, I don't care if you actually do this when you're writing, but for the sake of the test, let's use the Oxford comma. So before the and or before the or, whatever comes at the end here, you still do want to put a comma for the sake of the test. And they'll never make you choose. If they won't have answer choices that are both grammatically correct, one with and one without. So they're never going to make you choose. Are we all good with that rule? All right, let's go to the next one. Commas also, this one may not be as obvious, but I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Commas are always going to separate cities from states and months from years. So, I mean, we can give a bunch of examples for this, but let's talk about, like, there's going to be a comma there, or there's going to be a comma there. So when you're separating months and years or cities and states, you're always going to use a comma. And this one you'll actually see, oops, I don't know why, but the ACT thinks people don't know this. So at least once a test, you'll probably see something like this. So this is one, not super important. You don't use it all the time in the real world, but you definitely want to know that one. Does anyone have any questions about this one? Are we good? Okay. Okay, so the next rule, let's see, can we skip that one? Actually, we might do something easier. Okay, yeah. Can I erase this? You guys good? Okay. Okay. Every time you address someone by name, you have to use a comma after. So, if I'm talking to my friend Justin, if I say, Justin, can you, I don't know, do my homework for me? Even when we're talking, we sometimes use this comma when I'm asking someone to do something. Even like mom and dad also applies to this, so addressing someone by name, sometimes that works too. But like, mom, can you wash the dishes? Sometimes when we're speaking, we use that comma too. So whenever you're writing, you're going to do the same thing. Whatever you were asking mom to do. But there's always going to be a comma after you address someone by name. Does that one make sense? Got this one? Am I cool to erase? Alright. These are some of those easier ones that especially the ACT wants you to know because, I mean, those are gimme points. You don't want to miss those. Just to wind up. Okay. Okay, this one, kind of rare. You won't see this a whole lot. Commas are always going to set off or introduce quotes. So quotes can be either introduced or set off. You can either say, he said, I want to go to the bathroom. Or you can say, I want to go to the bathroom, he said. So both of those have the same meaning. It's just one of them you're setting off the quote and one of them you're introducing it. So either time you're going to use a comma. Whatever he said over here. So the first time, this comma is going to go outside the quotations when you're introducing something, and then whatever. Or maybe you want to write the sentence as whatever he said. That way, the comma goes inside the parentheses rather than outside. So that's the only thing. I don't think they're not gonna give you answer choices that don't have that on the inside, but good to know. Are we good with this one? All right. Okay, and this one you're gonna see all the time. We already do it when we're speaking. The comma hug is a rule that honestly comes up a lot. We do it a lot when we're speaking, not even the ACT, like just everywhere, all the time. When you're writing in English class, you probably do this. And that's when, first, does everyone know what a non-essential phrase is? Yeah, something that just doesn't need to be there. You could probably have the sentence without it. So anytime you have a non-essential phrase in the middle of a sentence, you can always hug it with commas. So you can put comma before and after it. So what did I put as my example here? Like, okay, if you don't study, you won't score well. That's a completely fine sentence by itself. But I added something non-essential here, heaven forbid. Doesn't really add anything to the sentence, but sometimes it's for emphasis or whatever. But you have to hug this with commas where you put one here and one here before and after that non-essential phrase. Do you guys want to see another example, or you guys got this one too? Good? All right. Okay, everyone good? Can I erase? All right. Okay, I'm on 6. Okay, commas always are going to separate adjectives that modify the same noun. Full disclosure, I don't care if you know what adjective and noun and verb and all these English words mean. We're not even going to talk about that. The ACT is never going to ask you. I just care that you know how they function. So I really don't care about the names and stuff. But adjectives basically describe, just like description words for anything. And a noun is a person or a place or a thing. So if I'm talking about, I don't know, let's talk about my hair. Okay. Where should I put the commas there? So, right there. Between tight, curly, and black, those 3 words, those are all adjectives. And if you have multiple adjectives describing the same thing, which is hair here, then you're going to put commas in between them. Now, the only time you got to be careful is make sure you know what the adjective is describing. So sometimes they might try to trick you and put like another noun here, but they tend not to, because that can get even confusing for like the best grammar people. It's just not not always straightforward. So they try to be really clear, and you'll be able to tell. But just watch out for what we're describing. Are we good? Can I erase? All right. Now we're going to talk about one that's a little more nerdy, I guess, but super important. This one happens all the time on the ACT. And this is one where people don't know if they're supposed to use a comma or not. This is how I write the rule. This is how I wrote it. How I wrote it in my notes. It's an independent clause, a comma, a fanboy's word, and then an independent clause again. So you're going to see this happen so often. Well, first let's talk about, does everyone know what an independent clause is?
It can stand alone.
Yeah, something that can stand alone as a sentence. So like, if I were to say, after I took a shower, is that an independent clause? No, it can't stand alone because it doesn't make sense as a sentence. But I took a shower, for example, is, because that's completely cool to stand alone. And then fanboys. Have you guys heard that before? Yeah? They're basically just coordinating conjunctions. I don't care if you know that word. Don't ever say it again. And they are I gotta remember these. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Again, you probably don't need to remember those. You'll be able to tell pretty much when a sentence is set up like this. And a lot of times people tend not to put this comma here because they don't know. This is one that's, you don't always speak with a comma when you're talking like this and when this happens in normal speech, so that's why people normally struggle with this one a little more than others. Alright, yeah, let's try an example here. Okay, where should I put the comma here?
Before, right after school.
Right after school, good. So our fanboys word is right here. So we have an independent clause, I went to school. Then we put our comma, our fanboys, I studied hard, another independent clause. So yeah, this one is going to come up a lot, and I won't write out some really long example, but the ACT is going to do something where they're going to put this ridiculously long independent clause that's like 3 lines of text, and then it'll give you a comma, a fanboys, and then some really tiny independent clause. And a lot of times people tend not to put that comma there because they don't know the rule, and it just sounds fine if you just say it without a comma. So when you have something that's like questioning if you have a comma before fanboys, if you recognize a fanboys word, then test this rule, because check if it's independent, and this one will come up a lot. So one I would definitely study and know. You guys got it? A cool to erase? Alright. What's that? Ooh, what number am I on? Is this 8? Okay. Okay, you're going to use a comma always after an introductory phrase, which is not to be confused with a dependent clause. It is a dependent clause, but it's not the same thing. An introductory phrase always goes at the beginning, and it's just something you're trying to tee off the sentence with, kind of. Oh, also, I didn't say this before, but the ACT is not going to test you on spelling. I'm a really bad speller, so if I spell something wrong up here, don't worry about it, it's fine. The ACT is not going to test you, so if you're a bad speller, it's cool also. But I think everything looks right now, but introductory is a tough one. Commas are always going to come after any sort of introductory phrase, which could be in the middle of the night. Let's use that one for an example. So in the middle of the night is an introductory phrase here. Then you would use a comma, and then normally you're going to have an independent clause that follows that. So in the middle of the night, I got up to drink water. Does anyone want another example? Or you guys got this one pretty much? Good?
Could you please let my device in?
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you not? My bad.
Thank you.
Oh, goodness. I should have been paying more attention to this. Did I get it? Is that good? Is everyone good now? Okay, I hope they're good. Does anyone want another example? Sorry. Are you guys good? Alright. Let's go to the next one. Okay. This is gonna be a tricky one. Well, not really. And this was what, 9? Now, I almost debate not teaching this one and just not even like putting this on the cheat sheet because it kind of mixes in with some other stuff. It kind of fits into other rules too, but this is a comma rule. This is grammatically the way it should be. Commas are always going to set off appositives, kind of, and that means pretty much a noun phrase or a noun specifically, or even a noun clause that follows the noun that describes them. So it's like almost like an explanation or a clarification. So I think the best way to do this is just give an example. Okay, so the appositive here is this clarification, explanation kind of thing here. So if you were to remove that, this is why I debate, because it's kind of like that non-essential rule where I did give it a hug, and that doesn't happen all the time. But if you were to remove this, the sentence would still make sense. It's just a lot of times you want to put some sort of clarification into the sentence. So if I'm talking about Messi here, Leo Messi, the greatest soccer player of all time, won the World Cup in 2022. This is the appositive, and always you have to put a comma before you let that join in the sentence. And this time it turned into a hug. It doesn't always have to, but so that's why this rule, I guess you don't have to study as hard because it kind of overlaps with other rules, and nobody ever remembers what an appositive is anyway, but it's fine. Are we good? All right, that's commas. Those are pretty much all the comma rules you're going to see on the ACT. So if you know those ones and they try to trick you into putting a comma in somewhere that it doesn't belong, don't fall for it. Especially with those independent, fanboys independent rule, careful. Because sometimes they'll trick you into thinking it's that rule. So know if you have an independent clause or a dependent one. Next, let's talk about colons. If anyone's wondering, that's what a colon looks like. It's two dots on top of each other. And I have 4 rules here. I would say this is probably, I'll say third most common piece of punctuation on the ACT. Oh, by the way, I'm not talking about periods because I'm hoping you guys know what a period does. But, so yeah, I would say commas comes first, semicolons probably second, and then colons. So this is, you'll see it a fair amount in punctuation questions. And a couple of the uses I'm hoping we know. We can fly through a couple of them. Like this first one, I'm hoping everybody's got that one, that a colon introduces a list. And let's try an example that involves a question too, because this is the one I feel like people get wrong all the time. What flavor of ice cream is your favorite? Strawberry, vanilla, or chocolate? For whatever reason, when you're asking a question, people forget that you can use punctuation at all. So they don't want to use these commas, they don't want to use this colon. I don't know. But just because something's a question, you can still use the same punctuation. But yeah, here we're using a colon because we're setting up this list of 3 possible options we're giving out for flavors of ice cream. Yeah, and we can talk about that previous thing where we were buying, what do we buy from the supermarket? I don't remember. What was it, eggs, cheese, and ham? I need to go to the supermarket to buy the following, eggs, cheese, and ham. So if you say something like the following, that's the ACT telling you to use a colon. So yeah, those are the main 2 ways you're going to see it introduce a list. And I brought this one up specifically. Be careful. You can use a colon when it's a question. Is everyone good on this one? Cool. Okay. Let's say specifically independent clauses. You can use it for a dependent clause, but that rule's really mucky. I don't think the ACT, I've never seen that, so I don't think that's going to matter. But colons can separate independent clauses, let's say in this scenario. And what makes this kind of different than a period, I guess, because periods also separate independent clauses. But what makes a colon different is it's more emphasis. So it can separate 2 independent clauses, and the ACT is never going to make you pick between a period or a colon, because that's a stylistic choice. Like sometimes the author will do it, sometimes they won't. Whatever, it depends on the writer, and it depends on what they mean. So they're never going to make you pick between them. So pro tip, on the ACT, if you have 2 answer choices that are exactly the same other than they have a colon or a period, cross them both out, because they'll never make you pick between them. One is not better than the other. So if you have something that's exactly the same other than that, both of those answers are wrong. So that's a nice thing that'll help you out here. What do I have for an example? Okay. His motive was clear. He wanted to win the game. You could 100% use a period there if you wanted. But the author in this scenario chose to use a colon for emphasis and kind of point out how related these two things are. Same as using a period. You won't see this one a whole lot, but I don't know. Maybe it'll impress your English teacher if you use it in class or something. Who knows? Is everyone good on this one? No one needs more time? Alright, cool. Okay, yeah, let's go. The I goes there. Oh, I have no idea. I'm hoping that's spelled right. Colons introduce clarifications or explanations of something. And I would say this might be the most common use of colons. It's between this and that list tee off thing. You'll see this one quite a bit too. And what's interesting about this is sometimes they might literally say, like, let's use this example. So the sentence might literally say, let me explain what I mean. Or like, let me clarify, or something like that. It might literally just tell you. So if you see something similar to this, let me explain what I mean by GOAT, the greatest of all time. If you see something like that where it's literally saying, let me explain, they're telling you, you need to use a colon. Are we good on this one? Alright. Last one. This is another one I tend maybe not to teach just because it's so rare. But the ACT does show it every once in a while, so we'll talk about it. Colons can introduce quotes. I guess this is a little different than a comma. You'll use it in different forms. Like, so there's an example of a colon teeing off or introducing a quote. I agree with the age-old saying, hard work beats talent. So, yeah, this is a way that it's kind of different, you can tell, than a comma because it's like directly teeing something up. I think that's pretty much what, if you're going to take anything away about colons, that's what I would take away, is that you're teeing up something. Are we good on this one? Yeah? Alright. That is colons. Let's talk about semicolons. Ooh, that looks upside down. A semicolon is almost the same thing. It looks a little bit different. It's just half of a colon. Now it looks like a comma and a period stacked on top of each other. And there's pretty much two uses of a semicolon. And I'm 99% sure you guys know one of them. The other one, half of the people do, half of the people don't. The other one's really cool. I think this is my favorite grammar rule. Let's talk about the first, the easy one. You can use a semicolon exactly how you use a period. Or a colon, that one rule we talked about where we can separate clauses. I don't even know if I'm going to put an example for this. I mean, I think you guys know how periods work. And the only difference between a semicolon and a period stylistically is emphasis. There's no grammatical difference. You could pick either one and they both would grammatically be correct. So they're not going to test you. It's the same thing as that colon thing. If you see two answer choices that are exactly the same, other than the fact that one of them has a period and one of them has a semicolon, they're both wrong. Because they will never ever make you pick one or the other. They're both good. It's just this one maybe is a little more emphasis, and maybe some argue more advanced. Are we good with this one? Okay. The next one is this fun rule I'm talking about, that when I first learned this, I was doing this all the time when I was writing. And that is that a semicolon can be used as a super comma. I think I just found this word really cool, super comma, so I loved this rule. It was so much fun. And what a super comma means is that if you have a sentence that, let's say you're writing a list, and the list of things that you're talking about already has commas. So let's go back to our city and state, or not city and state. Yeah, city and state rule. Like, if I'm listing and, let's go. And okay, let's say I'm listing these three cities. Can you imagine if I put commas here, how annoying and how confusing this sentence is to read and how choppy it sounds? Sioux City, South Dakota, New York, New York, and Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So many commas. It's so confusing and just kind of a mouthful, and like that, it just doesn't sound good. So when you're separating a list of things that already has commas in it, you can use semicolons as kind of like super commas that are like stronger than the other comma, pretty much. So now you're separating a list by using semicolons instead of commas. This works, I mean, you'll see it a lot either with cities and states or months and years. That's kind of the main way it's used. But sometimes you'll see like a super duper long sentence that they want to separate stuff by, like maybe it has explanations in it. So it'd be like, okay, let's go back to these things we're buying from the supermarket. I'm gonna buy cheese, comma, which is my dog's favorite. Well, you already used a comma in there, so maybe you should use a super comma to separate the rest of the list. So you'd be like, a comma there, my dog's favorite. Semicolon, ham, which my brother loves a lot, which you used a comma in there. Then put another semicolon and whatever. But yeah, that's the only other use of a semicolon. Are we good on this one? All right, awesome. We've got three more punctuation marks that you could possibly see on the ACT. This one has about the book that you guys have, the ACT 36 book, writes like 4 different rules for this, but I'm going to talk about all of them in one because I think it's silly. I'm going to talk about apostrophes. And the reason they write a bunch of different rules is because, well, the reason I hate that they write a bunch of rules is because they're all talking about the same thing. I mean, we all only know apostrophes to do one thing. So, let's talk about it. The one thing they're going to do is show possession of something or ownership of something. We all know that. But the book writes 100 different ways that you could show possession and some clarifications that I'm going to talk about through just some different examples. So let's start with the obvious one. If I'm talking about my book, I'm going to put apostrophe S, book. So that's how the reader will know that it belongs to me. That's the one I think everyone knows. Is that cool? All right. Now let's say we have a pair of twins, Mike and Mary, and they live in the same house. And you're going over to their house. Someone tell me which one of those is correct when I'm talking about Mike and Mary's or Mike's and Mary's. Which one is correct? Yeah, the second one. Yeah. Do you know why? Just because. Yeah. We'll talk about why exactly, but I'll give you another example in a second why that top one could be correct for something different. But yes, if Mike and Mary are indeed twins and they live in the same house, then we want to use the second one, yes. So if you have a list of people or whatever, kind of, if you have 2 different subjects, you only need to put the apostrophe on the second one if they both have the same relation to the last thing. So if I'm talking about a house here and they both live in it, I want Mike and Mary's house. Let's say Mike and Mary aren't twins anymore and they're best friends, and they both have these beach houses right next to each other, and you're talking about how both of them have really good landscape. Then, if you're talking about 2 separate things, so like Mike's house and Mary's house, then you could say Mike's and Mary's houses have nice landscape. So that's why these 2 things are extremely different and extremely important that you know the difference, because they mean really different things. This implies that they're living in the same house, and this implies that they have 2 separate houses. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, awesome. Okay. Oh, I spoiled it. Oh, I was going to ask where the apostrophe goes, but I spoiled it. So when you have something that's plural, like your neighbors, rather than just a single neighbor, normally plural things end in S. So you're going to put the apostrophe after the S. So you don't need, that's to clarify it's plural, yeah?
Isn't that the same with like names that end in like an S?
That's where I was going to go next. That one is tricky because let's use Chris that ends in S. Both of these are actually correct. You could say Chris's like that, or you could say Chris's like that. And there's still a bunch of debate about which one's correct. I personally like the first one better because Chris is singular, so like I would want to put apostrophe S at the end. And when we say it, it sounds like Chris's, so it sounds like we're adding another S at the end. But some people say something that's singular and ends in an S should still have it. Whatever. So they're not going to test you over these 2. These both are correct. Either one is fine. But do know that when you have something that's plural, then always there's no, you can't do that. There's no debate about that. When something's plural, you want it. But yeah, I don't know why we can't figure this out. I feel like it's whatever. So yeah, those are pretty much all your apostrophe rules. They all have to do with possession. You're never going to use an apostrophe for something else on the ACT, other than a contraction, but you guys know those, so we're not going to talk about that. Is everyone good with this? All right, awesome. Now, these last two punctuation marks we have, people confuse them a lot because they're kind of similar. They look really similar, and I don't know, they're not used similar at all, but on a computer they look similar. You might type one instead of the other. So let's start with the bigger one. And whenever I'm teaching this, I always think I should just draw this really long and big so that people know. The longer one is a dash. The longer one is a dash, and the smaller one, that short one, is a hyphen. We'll talk about the difference between them quick, but there's really only two uses for a dash on the ACT. This one is, if there's a dash on the ACT, what Manoj used to teach me when I first took this class was if there's a dash, 95% of the time there's going to be another one. So the rule specifically for that is, I call it a dash hug. Other people, you could write out the super long explanation about something non-essential, blah, 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 blah. And if you recall, we just talked about comma hugs too. That's another thing that happens a lot. And again, it's kind of the same. Like a dash hug and a comma hug are really similar. They both are grammatically correct, I guess, but a dash hug again is just more emphasis, or like something that's really interrupting the sentence, like really not necessary. And there is one difference with a dash hug and a comma hug that this is what the ACT wants to make sure you know, is that with dashes you can separate an entire sentence in the middle of a sentence. Commas can't do that. Comma hugs are going to be non-essential phrases. Dash hugs, you can hug an entire non-essential sentence in the middle of something else. So let's talk about Big Mike here. That's my example I'll use. Really mean. Okay, whoa, did I put the other dash there? This is one thing that a comma hug can't do, where I abruptly stop in the middle of a sentence and add an entirely new sentence. Commas can't do that. So here, Big Mike, his classmates call him the schoolyard bully, is really mean. You can't do this with commas where you would put commas there. If you wanted to do that, you could say Big Mike, the schoolyard bully, is really mean. You could do that with commas, but this is what makes a dash hug special. And this actually happens quite a bit on the ACT, where you'll dash hug something. So, yeah, know this one pretty well. 95-ish% of the time, there's a dash, there's going to be another one. And if there's one, then be careful, because the rule with that is mucky. Are we good with the dash hug? Yeah? Okay, let's quick mention this other rule that could possibly happen with the dash. The other thing you can do is just add words to the end of a sentence. And what makes this rule important that you should know, maybe I would put like a little footnote or something. You can only do this when there's a logical and clear break in flow. So like a break in flow in a sentence, then you can add a dash and add words to the end of it. So get into. How the heck do you spell scholarship? I wrote this down somewhere. There we go. Okay. Our subject here, he wasn't going to go to Harvard, dash, unless he got a big scholarship. So here there is a break in the sentence. He wasn't going to go to Harvard unless he got a big scholarship. And sometimes they'll check this by kind of having like a, it's almost to add emphasis. I know I've said that like 5 times, but technically you could say he wasn't going to go to Harvard unless he got a scholarship. That's okay too. But they're trying to say, the author here is making it seem like this is like a huge deal, that like really, really unless he gets a scholarship. So if you put a dash here, it's like just more emphasis really. I guess that's what I'll say. Are we cool with this one? You can add words at the end of a sentence if there's a break in flow with a dash. Okay. Last piece of punctuation that you will see. Is a hyphen. So this is just a dash, but like half the length. All right, and the first thing you can do with this is you can connect numbers and words. So when you're describing something and you want to bring a number into it, like if you're talking about how tall someone is, or how wide the door is, I don't know, like a dimension or something. Put hyphens in between there. Or, and it works both ways, where if you're using written out form or like a number form, I should write this as foot, sorry guys. So like either way, you want to use dashes, whether it's spelled out or not. Does that make sense? This also works with, you're going to see a lot of like measurements of like 20 mile wide or 7 foot tall or something like that. Another one you could see quite a bit is year old. So like 7 years old or 7-year-old, I guess, always has hyphens in it, whether you're using the number or writing it out. Are we cool with that? Yeah. All right. Good. That's a common one. I don't even know if I'm going to give examples for this, but we'll write this one too. So 2 kinds of relations. When you have a great relative or a relative in law, both of those, this hyphen sucks, hold on. There we go. You're gonna use hyphens both times for a great something or something in law. Grandpa, great grandpa, you're gonna use hyphen. brother-in-law, you're gonna use a hyphen. Whatever. Are we good with that one? Is it okay if I don't give examples? Alright, cool. Let's go to this is another one I won't give examples for, but anytime you use the prefix self when you're talking about anything, any word that starts with self is gonna have a hyphen. So a couple of good examples like self-directed, self-motivated, self-esteem, they all have hyphens in them. I won't write an example. You guys can pick any of those, but Michael, good. All right. Two more. One of them kind of easy. One of them is like muddy water. This one, again, easy. Anytime you got a fraction, you're going to put a hyphen in it. So, one-third has a hyphen in it. And whatever other fraction you want to use. You'll see like these little fractions, specifically in passages that are like talking about money. They love using this. So, yeah. We good with that? Can we move on? All right, last rule, and then we will go on break. This last one, it's a little tricky. So there's these things called prepositional phrases or combination phrases that are kind of like, I don't know how to describe them, but they're kind of, it's like a phrase that you'd use that the words kind of all fit together anyway. So a couple of, I don't know how to explain this without giving examples. Let's talk about like 1 in a million is a prepositional phrase. So when you write that, every single one is going to have a hyphen. So 1 in a million is one you're going to see all the time. Or, I don't even know if people use this anymore, but like Johnny on the spot is another one where you're going to have hyphens in between all of them. Jack of all trades is another one. But it's going to look the same kind of. So it's like these phrases that kind of, they describe something, but they're not like, they don't really make sense. They're like kind of all smushed together. And there's a bunch of different phrases like this, but I would say these two are probably the most common. 1 in a million you'll see quite a bit. Or 1 in something. So yeah, does anyone have any questions about that one? I know that's a little tricky. Nothing? Okay. So there is all of the punctuation on the ACT English test. Now, like I said at the beginning, these are, in general, even if some of these are tricky, they're supposed to be gimme points. The ACT wants you to know all these. You shouldn't have to be missing like punctuation questions a whole lot. And this is going to help you save a whole lot of time too and focus on those like style and tone and those questions. So I'm hoping you guys will somehow, some way study these and look over them. And if you're practicing ever actually on the ACT and you pick out one of these rules, awesome. It'll save you some time. So, yeah, next time I'm here, we'll talk maybe grammatical, or maybe we'll jump to some of those more difficult questions. Yeah, maybe we'll go to rhetorical skills next time. We'll see. Does anyone have any more questions about punctuation, or anything we good? Good? All right. I will let you all have a break then. Everyone knows where the bathrooms are? All right, cool. And then